Welcome to the Halton Stadium. We're here for a first in a series of interviews, getting to know a bit more about Widnes Vikings and behind the scenes. I'm joined by Chief Executive Phil Finney. Phil, thanks for. I'm looking forward to this actually and finding out a bit more. 10 months or so in the role now. You look a lot less stressed now than maybe earlier in the year. Can you just recap of what's happened over that time since you took on the job?
Oh well, it's been as you say, I think it is getting up for 10 months now in this particular post. I think it's fair to say it's been an absolute roller coaster, hasn't it? You know what I mean? I think when I've been sitting down with Sam and just going through sort of like what we talk about today, it's quite overwhelming really when you consider exactly what's happened in that period. So obviously I think that the start of it, obviously administration started it, didn't it? And I think the one of the difficult things that we had to cope with was the loss of a few senior players through that period, and then there was some really good staff as well that left through that period of time, and we've actually gone from in 2018 we had 42 members of staff, full-time members of staff, and we're now at about 10, and that includes the rugby staff. So that was something that we've had to try and cope with post administration and then throughout last season. Other things behind the scenes that were going on that were really tough to deal with were obviously a lot of the money that we budgeted for last year, the parachute payment, I think probably quite rightly was withheld, and we never received any of that post February. The academy funding, that was all going on behind the scenes, so we lost 50% of the academy funding, and the whole academy programme was jeopardised through that period. So we had to go through 2 full academy accreditations, with about 2 months in between them to make sure that we were on track and we were satisfying the needs of Super League, who obviously, as you know, hold the purse strings for the academy funding. So that was there were a couple of things. Then there was the go and make an announcement and the decision that we were going to be part-time. As of 2020, that was a massive decision for the club to make, and obviously there was a lot of fallout of that then in terms of players inevitably were going to have to move on from that situation with for different reasons. Obviously you've got some senior players that were obviously used to a level of salary that we couldn't accommodate as a part-time club, and then at the other end of the spectrum some fantastic young players that naturally would want to remain in full-time environments and preferably Super League environments that I've since sort of moved on since that decision, which was for us that was a tough one. There was a lot of really good young players in there, people like Ollie Ashall and Brad Walker, Keenan Brand, lads that we've worked with for years and years. It's quite emotional for us to have to say goodbye to them, but obviously you've got to respect their wishes to play in a full-time environment and have a crack at Super League where appropriate. So that was going on, and then what else? We got to Wembley in that period as well. So all of these things are going on, whilst day to day you're still trying to run a club.
Yeah, and you reopened the shop as well. That was another thing that was important, I suppose, for getting the revenue streams back into the club.
Definitely, yeah. I'd have to go on record saying this. I'm no retail expert, and I had, thankfully, Chris Price, the chairman of the board, and his wife Joanne, were absolutely unbelievable through that period, because I wouldn't have had a clue where to start in terms of the retail operation. We, X-Blades last year were absolutely amazing. There was Lee Jenkinson up there. There was an awful lot of stock that had been ordered previously that hadn't been paid for, and they were brilliant in helping to facilitate us getting the market up and running, the shop down there, and that has and will become one of our most important income streams.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there about yourself personally. I suppose this time 12 months ago you probably wouldn't have imagined you'd been chief exec of Widnes Vikings. What's the emotion for you of having that role now?
Well, it was just last year really. It was a bit of a blur, wasn't it? I think for everybody, associated with the club, and I never set out, I didn't pursue this role at all, kind of thing. And my passion is sort of working with probably younger players and seeing them develop and coming through. But I think after what had gone on, I felt that the opportunity to be in a position like this at this club, it was too good for me personally to turn down. Just in terms of trying to trying to set the club in the right direction. It's obviously not just me. We've got a board of directors and we've got some amazing staff. Do you know what I mean? And we've lost. What's been difficult? We've lost some amazing staff as well this year. Some staff have moved on. Like Liam Clark, unbelievable member of staff who's moved on. Nikki Atherton was brilliant for us. She's had to move on as well. And losing people like that was really difficult. But I think the overwhelming thing for me from last year was, first of all, the coming together of the community, back in February. Hopefully that community feel that we sort of paid them back a little bit with, going to Wembley, and hopefully with what we're trying to achieve now, they feel that we've actually recognised what they did. But I think the staff for me was the big thing, that the way the staff rallied round. I think everybody accepts, don't they, that if you're in professional sport, you've got to sacrifice things, but the levels of sacrifice that our staff went to last year to help, first of all, save the club, but then to keep it running until the end of the year was just absolutely unbelievable. And it was it's a skeleton staff, but everybody dug in and just did everything they possibly could. So that's been the most pleasing thing for me.
Yeah. So we've gone over the recap, and obviously, as much as we can't forget, it's important to sort of move on from that and look at what's happening moving forward, and lots of positive things going on. Tell us a bit more about what the club's plans are and what the vision is for moving forward.
Yeah, well, just to sort of finish that one off, like, that's it now. We don't want to talk about admin anymore. We don't want to talk about admin, relegation, going from full-time to part-time. I think hopefully that's done and dusted now, and we can look forward. When I first started, I wanted to start trying to change things and implement plans and whatever else, but the reality is we were dealing with that much turmoil that we couldn't. So it was only really when the season finished we were able to probably sit down properly and start looking at moving forward and what we wanted to become as a club. So I've spent a lot of time reflecting and talking to all the staff about what we think the club should be about. And ultimately, it's a rugby league club, and it's about playing rugby on a Sunday and putting the best team out and the best performances you can possibly put in. But I think it's a little bit more than that. I think it's about actually giving people positive experiences. Making sure that whether it's a player, a first team player, or a player coming through the system, it's a staff member, whether it's a sponsor, whether it's a supporter, whoever we engage with, we're doing our level best to give them the best experience we possibly can. And I think for us, day to day, then that, if everybody goes out with the mindset of how do we give this person or this player, an opportunity, to experience something really, really positive, then that's what we want to be known for as a club. And that obviously that then filters into absolutely every facet of the organisation, whether it's youth development, whether it's the retail department, whatever it is. That's our sort of mindset moving forward. Yeah.
And you've just launched the new kit for 2020, and obviously the video, and there was the launch event, and there's a lot of talk about identity and the behaviours of the club that you want to portray. How important is that to this vision moving forward?
Well, I think it's really important, because I think one of the things with the size of staff we've got at the moment, and we are aspirational as a club, we do, all of us, I think, at some point, want to be playing at the highest level, we can possibly be at, but we've got to be really realistic. I think it's really, really easy to sit down, and for me to sit at home, and write this, really aspirational plan and present it to everyone, but whether that actually is realistic, is a different thing. So actually coming up with plans that everybody buys into, I think that's something that, I think we've probably lacked a little bit, in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever it's been. I think for the staff to get behind the plan, I think we've got to embed particular behaviours that allow us then to form this identity we want. So we've sat down, and the staff themselves have obviously come up with some key words that we want to represent us, and embed them within our day-to-day sort of workings kind of thing. So, we've looked at sort of work ethic, and I know that sounds daft, and you think everybody's got a work ethic, but I honestly don't think they have anymore. The society's different now, isn't it? So actually talking about work ethic and what that looks like, integrity is a massive, massive one for this club. There's a lot of bridges that we need to build. There's a lot of people I think we need to convince to get involved with the club, and we need to integrity's got to be something that, for us, is at the very top of that list. Dedication is a huge one. People being dedicated to their own individual job roles and how that fits in with the collective. Non-conformity is an interesting one that got through up by one of the staff, which, you know, some people said to me like the other night at the kit launch, what does that even mean? But I think if you look back at the video, we had like Doug Lawton in there smoking a fag on the touchline. I'm not condoning that. I don't think Tim's going to be doing that. Council has something to say about that. But you know, you look back to when we were successful, we weren't conformists. You know, we had people that would take risks. You had, you know, Dougie Lawton going up and dragging Alan Tate down from Kelso and trying things. And you know, it's not about being different for being, you know, different sake. It's about actually questioning why do we do what we do. You know, and if we can do something a little bit different that actually works for us, then that's what we need to be. I think in the past, I think rugby league clubs, you only have to look at the way we play at the minute. There's a lot of imitation going on, and you know, actually, we love the staff here. I think Tim, you look at the way Tim's teams have played over the years, they don't conform. You know, they play, they throw the ball around, and I think that needs to permeate the whole organisation. People need to feel that actually, you know, I can have a go at that and I won't be rated if I get it wrong. So non-conformity is important, and then enterprise, very similar sort of theme. You know, trying to look at things a little bit differently. You know, do things a little bit differently that maybe other people don't do. I think, you know, in February the sort of resurgence of Vicky, you know, was a great example of, you know, I don't think many clubs have got a, you know, a supporter group that's as successful as that. And then the last one is support, and it's not just about the support coming on a Sunday, that's huge obviously, but it's also about how the club supports everybody, you know, the staff supporting the board supporting the staff, how do we support players, their significant others. So it's they're the key sort of behaviours that we're trying to embed.
Yeah, one of the big changes you did was moving from full-time to part-time. I don't want to go too much into the past, but explain the rationale behind that and how that impacts you moving forward, and can the club still be successful as it wants to be even though it's part-time?
Yeah, I think to cut a long story short, the main reason we're going part-time was the finances. You know, the budget that we thought we'd have available to spend, and obviously the budget we can spend on players is determined by what the RFL tell us we can spend, and that's determined by the budgets that we submit and evidence of what we brought in over the years. So even if we'd wanted to go full-time, we might not have been able to go full-time. But it was a financial decision, and also one, I think we were full-time last year technically. We were getting beat regularly by part-time teams. So I think there's a real misconception that if you're full-time, you know, you're going to be outstanding and you're going to be able to walk all over teams. In reality, that's not the truth. And even when we're in Super League, and I obviously speak to a lot of people at Super League clubs who are full-time, and actually they're not necessarily full-time. So that had a huge bearing on it. Moving forward, I think you only have to look at York. You know, I think York are an absolutely brilliant example of what can be achieved in a part-time environment, and what Tim's really trying to instill in the players at the moment is that they may be part-time in hours, but the full-time in the mentality, in their approach, you know, to how they go about the business. So I don't think being part-time necessarily is going to impact upon our long-term plans and our vision to hopefully try and get back into Super League at some point in the future. I don't think it's going to be next year, it might not be the year after, but our job now is to develop the infrastructure underneath the rugby team kind of thing and get all of the business side of things right. So if we do get back there, that sustains us. Yeah,
you've had a lot of player turnover as a result. I suppose that was a natural consequence of going part-time. Was that inevitable, and were you sad to see players leave?
Yeah, I think, you know, for me personally, the younger players, that's really difficult. It's really difficult when they move on, because, you know, I certainly didn't start here to work with a group of like really dedicated and committed staff to recruit players, develop players, and then see them running around for Warrington. Do you know what I mean? That's not my ambition kind of thing. I'd want them playing for Widnes at Super League and being competitive. But at the same time, those young players, we've known them since they were, you know, 13, 14. Some of them we know the parents, and ultimately they're not players, they're people, aren't they? You know what I mean? You want the best for them people. So to see, you know, Matt Whitley last year, you know, absolutely killed it, didn't he, playing for Catalan? And you know, we can take some pride in that. You know, obviously there's people that coach him at Bold Miners and at Haydock High School, and then obviously he was at Saints. They did a great job with him. you know, I'd like to think we've contributed something to Matt's career as well. So it's nice to see them go off, but it's when you're going through it, that's not nice. You know, that's not nice because you've got young lads that are coming in like really upset. They're really emotional, telling you that they've got to leave, and I'd like to think they've got to leave because of the circumstances, not because they necessarily want to leave. Obviously, the players at the other end of the spectrum, the older players, you know, players like Christine that gave us years of like brilliant service. I would probably say Chris was always paid unders. You know, I had calls about Chris last year about going to other clubs, full-time clubs and some Super League clubs, and he just wanted to stay in. Do you know what I mean? He like loved the club and he wanted to help the club out, the sort of Maya kind of thing, and just difficult to see him. Obviously, then you've got Hep Cale that was a brilliant servant for the club as well. So every single club every year loses players, don't they? You know, whether that's because they move to other clubs because they get a better financial offer, or they're not quite good enough, they don't get offered a contract, or the career ends. You know, and I think there's been a lot made of the player movement at Widnes, but every club has player movements. Going from a full-time Super League club to a part-time Championship club, there's going to be a lot of turnover. So, and do you know what? I think it was probably inevitable as well. You know, it was going to happen, but I think it was needed.
Yeah, and even with, you mentioned players that have come through the academy who have left, the club's made the decision to commit to carry on with the academy. And was there ever consideration not to do that? Did the board see it as imperative that the academy continued?
There was an awful lot of discussion and dialogue around, you know, the academy at this club. It's very unique, isn't it? I think that a part-time Championship club is running a Category 1 sort of full-time academy, an LDRL team, you know, a women's team. Effectively, other than the first team, we're still operating like a Super League club would. So there was a lot of conjecture around the academy. Obviously, when your funding's cut by 50%, you've got to really question about, can we afford to have an academy? And one of the things that, you know, we're not naive. One of the decisions that we had to make was, could it pay for itself? You know, through the central funding that we get, through the sponsorship we get through the academy, can it sort of wash its own face? And we're hoping it can. I'd like to go on record saying that it's not. The academy isn't some sort of parasite that sucks money away from the first team. It doesn't do that, and it's never done that. We're not a club that can afford to spend money on things that aren't successful, but it's not just about that, is it? You know, you've grown up in Widnes. Widnes is a rugby league town, and even though the participation in rugby league is declining, not just in Widnes, across the sport, we're still turning out players. You know, some of the players aren't at this club. You know, you've got Lewis Dodd at St Helens, he really is the next of a parent, but he started in our dev squad. He trained with us until he was 14, 15 years of age, and, you know, inevitably if Saints come knocking, you know, some people's heads are going to get turned. You got Harry Smith at Wigan, who's an outstanding kid. So Widnes needs to provide sort of inspiration, you know, to young players to get involved in rugby, and we think that's really, really important for this club to continue. The academy's become part of our identity over the years, and, you know, hopefully it will continue for many years to come.
Looking at off the field, the club's already passed, I think, 1,900 season ticket sales in 2 months. How happy are you to have hit that figure?
Yeah, buzzing, absolutely buzzing, because, you know, that was one of the things. It's a bit of a litmus test, isn't it, where you're like, right, we got through last year, like, are people going to stay with us? And to give some context to this, we didn't have a lot of data from last year, or accurate data to base any decisions on and plans moving forward. But we thought we'd sold 2,600 season tickets last year. When we've really drilled into it, we only sold about 1,500 it was. So I think there was about 700 given away to kids, and there was a couple of hundred others that were given away to other people. So to actually sell 1,900 in the space of 4 weeks versus 1,500 in the space of 12 months, you know, was really heartening for us, and it's put us, from our season ticket projections and our ticket projections, it's put us on track to where we need to be. So just a huge thank you to all the fans that came forward and the supporters that have bought tickets in that period, and we're still hoping before the season starts we'll sell a few more, but as a start we're absolutely buzzing with that.
You know, season tickets a massive part of the funding streams that you need to compete Can you break down a little bit how the financial side works, and what you have to show in theory to the RFL, money wise, to gain your maximum funding?
Yeah, well, there's a number of income streams that we've got. The season tickets and ticketing generally. So you've got your season tickets, you've got your match day walk, you've got your away tickets, your cups, and that's your ticket, and then you've got your retail. So anything we do down in the market at the moment, and they're the two biggest income streams. We've obviously then got the RFL funding. The RFL funding, you get your base funding for being in the championship. You then get your funding from the year before, which is related to your league position. So clearly, we haven't got a great deal of that from where we finished last year. Despite obviously, it was brilliant that we overcame a 12 point deficit, but next year we're hoping that we'll be in a different position from that point. And then you've got this return on investment, which is your 4 different strands that you get. We're all basically competing with each other, the League One, the Championship clubs, which I think it's a really good thing. I think it forces clubs to look at what you're doing, forces people like Sam, to get his act together with the media and the website and all that kind of stuff. So we've got maximum funding on the return on investment, which we're really proud of. And then you've got other streams. So you've got your commercial. So everybody knows Dave Roll. He'll be doing a video as well. So you put about 3 or 4 hours aside to that one. But Dave's got a massive job on. He's got obviously the kit sponsor, the training kit to get sponsored. He's got hospitality packages to sell. He's a busy man. Well, in more ways than one, he's a busy man, Dave, isn't he? And then we've got community, and with Vicky. Vicky is a huge thing that we need to do our level best alongside, Jason Shaw, to make sure we keep the levels of membership with Vicky as high as we possibly can, because that's become a really, really important source of income for the club.
We'll move on a little bit to the playing side now. There's a bit of talk about the likes of Owen Farnworth and Jacob Dugdale who haven't. There's been no announcements related to them. Where does the land lie with players like them?
Well, very early in the piece, it was May the 1st. I had to call all the players, any player that's out of contract in that year. You've got to let them know by May the 1st whether, and this is in a full-time environment, whether you're going to retain them and offer them a contract, whether you're going to release them, or you're not quite sure. So at that time, we didn't know whether it'd be full-time, we didn't know whether it'd be part-time, we didn't know what the budget would be. So pretty much every single player that's contract was expiring got a phone call of me to say, we don't know what we're doing with you. We'll try and keep you posted. Owen Farnworth, Jacob Dugdale have always been contracted beyond the end of this season anyway, and they're fixed-term contracts. So their contracts were honoured. Owen Farnworth in particular, they were all told that if they got opportunities to go elsewhere, just to come and speak to us, and let us know what the situation. And Owen did have some interest. One of the things with Owen is Tim really rates him, really thinks highly of Owen, and so we've had a sit down with Owen just after Tim was appointed and told him that. So Owen will be staying with us. Right. So he's got another couple of years after this on his contract, which I think for someone like Owen Farnworth, being part-time, coached by Tim Sheens at this level, is the right thing for his development where he is age-wise. And I've no doubt Owen Farnworth has got the potential to be a Super League player in the future, but as a front rower at 20 years of age, Tim was a forward himself, he's worked with some of the best forwards in the world. I think Owen's in the right place for his development. Jacob Dugdale's an outstanding kid, isn't he? He's contract with us as well, so yeah, he's not going anywhere. Is
there any others as well?
No, I think what we've done is you can see from the players on the website, the ones that are still contracted, the ones that have got new contracts. There's a couple of players actually coming on trial, at the minute. So we're having a look at them, and recruitment, it's ongoing. It's constantly ongoing, and I think there's probably a little bit of panic at the minute about the squad doesn't seem to be particularly big, and all the Super League clubs have obviously gone back training. There's going to be movement in and out of those clubs, kind of thing. So you can imagine how connected Tim Sheens is. He's probably phones going all the time about giving players opportunities. So there's certainly no panic our end.
And one of those opportunities for adding players is dual registration. There's been a few murmurs about that. Is that something that the club's really progressing with and looking at as an option?
Yeah, there's a couple of clubs that are really interested in doing a dual reg with us. Obviously, with having someone like Tim Sheens, and also our facilities as well plays a big part in that. clubs are probably, you know, more inclined now to want to get into a dual reg partnership with ourselves. I think dual reg is something that I don't think was given the time or the necessary work to make it a success. I personally really like it. I think I don't think we've got the volume of players in the game to have competitive 18s, to have competitive reserves. I really don't. I'd love, that is the right model philosophically to have, but we just haven't got the number of players at the minute. Dual reg worked for us. It worked for the Twins. It worked for Ed Chamberlain. It worked
Featherstone last season, of course.
Well, some of their best players were on dual reg, weren't they? You know, so I'm actually a fan of it. But you've got to get into a partnership that works for both. You know, and some partnerships haven't worked. If you get in a player in a pivotal position one week and you don't get him the next, then you know you've got one issue with your own players that are getting disgruntled by it, and also the continuity that you need. So whatever partnership we get into, we need to make sure that it not only works for the parent club, but it also works for us. So yeah, hopefully we'll get something bottomed out in the next month or so, and we'll have a really vibrant partnership with someone.
Is that the only thing ongoing signing wise, recruitment wise at the moment? There's a few names kicking around that I've seen. Is there any movement on loan deals maybe or other signings?
Well, like I say, it's all. We genuinely haven't got anything that's ready to go. You know, in the immediate future, there's lots of conversations going on. There's lots of people that want to come. There's a few that, you know, I get asked about all the time, and honestly, I just don't know where they come from. I don't know where these rumours come. Probably people like you, mate, out there. But yeah, you know, part of it, I think, you know, we do need some more players. We are looking for a bit of seniority in the pack, a little bit, and maybe another halfback, you know, to bring in as well. Which that's Tim's domain now.
Can I mention the particular halfback?
You can mention one, yeah.
Is that anywhere near?
Are we talking about Blake Wallace?
Yeah.
Honestly, there's been no sort of dialogue between us and Blake Wallace or his representative. So.
And he's still at Toronto, isn't he? Is that a dual registration maybe conversation?
Well, that's been tossed up, hasn't it? But the logistics of...
You can't imagine Toronto have got many spare players really for dual reg.
No, but they haven't got a reserves or an academy, have they? Toronto, so it's the age-old thing about if you've got a player that's, you know, he's either coming back from injury or he's not playing, how do you keep him up to speed, and how do you allow him to return to first team rugby without playing for anyone? So I think, you know, Toronto are definitely
yeah. But then I suppose from your point of view, you don't want a halfback coming in one week and then not being there the next.
Positions like halfback, you know, hooker, fullback, you know, they're the positions where you need a lot of stability in, aren't they? You can probably bring, you know, a forward in. You know, you can bring him off the bench for 20 minutes kind of thing and take him off or whatever else. And the way they play is very similar, isn't it? But to bring like key decision makers into your team, yeah, that can be really disruptive. So if we were going to bring a hooker, for instance, in, you'd want him on a season-long loan, something like that. You know, I know Danny Craven at the minute is. I think Danny Craven's acting as our head of recruitment at the moment, or thinks he is.
Oh, is he, right?
Yeah, he's sounding players out.
Is the backup hooker this ex-player that's been murmured around?
Do you know what? Like, we've not had conversations with Danny. Yeah. We haven't had a specific conversation with Warrington about it, but obviously at the moment we've got Logan Tomkins, who's an outstanding player. We've got Jacob Dugdale that's still only 17. So I think it's probably unfair to expect Jacob to be playing week in, week out as an understudy to Logan. You know, if we could get Danny Walker here for a season-long loan at the right price, then
you do it.
Why would we not do it?
Logan, obviously, Tomkins signing came a bit left field. No one had really knew it was happening, and it became a surprise to everyone. And there was a little murmur floating around that we must have had some sort of secret millionaire investor that got Tomkins over the line. What have you got to say about that?
If we have got one, I've never met him. I've never met him. No, genuinely, we haven't. You know, there's no additional funding being given to this club to go and get someone like Logan Tomkins. I think I actually haven't met Logan yet. I think his first session was on Tuesday night, and all the conversations basically were between Tim and I'd love to sit here and take credit for getting Logan Tomkins on the line, but I had nothing to do with it. I think Logan's stage of his career away from rugby has got to a point where he wanted to go part-time and concentrate on business interests. So the fact that he'd been coached by Tim before and they know each other, and what I like about Logan, he's just such an industrious player. You know, I think he suits where we are at the minute and what we need to be about. So you know, there was no secret sort of millionaire coming in and bankrolling any signings like that, and you know, I wish there was.
Yeah.
But
so if there's any secret millionaires watching
out there, come forward. Yeah, Matt Taylor, if you've got any more, come back, mate. But yeah.
And Logan, of course, played for Widnes briefly. I think it was on loan back in those days in the Championship last time. We just finished with the kit. You obviously put an event on for sponsors, a real intimate event for sponsors, and then you had the fans kit launch. Slightly spoiled a little bit by the kits being leaked after the sponsors. Don't know how many people seen them.
Yeah.
I mean, was that a bit disappointing to see that? Because obviously you'd like to be able to you know, you're trying to be open and build trust, and you almost want a bit of trust in the back that you can show people that they're not going to leak it out.
The whole point of that event was to express our sort of gratitude towards the sponsors. The sponsors, you can imagine collectively, they put a significant amount of money into the club. And we thought it would be really nice to allow people that have worked really, really hard on their own businesses to develop their own brands, to see their own brand on our kit before anybody else. And I wouldn't make any apologies for that. I think that's really important, because I hope Dave Rolt talks about this in his piece with you, but one of Dave's targets is to retain as many of those sponsors as he possibly can. Year on year, people go on the kit, they come off the kit. You know, there's obviously an issue with retention. So part of our strategy was to try and make sure that they feel valued and it's genuine, it's sincere. So that's what it was about. But to have pictures leaked was clearly like really disappointing. And actually, we don't know who did it. I must admit, I've got my suspicions, and I think I know who it was. There were some people in there that weren't sponsors, you know, that night. So they've come along with guests of people that have paid. There was other people knocking around, waiters and waitresses. I'm not saying it was them, by the way, because Parttime Rouge did a great job of the night, and yeah, I'm hoping to get some freebies off them in the future. So, but clearly it was disappointing, and you know what the motives are behind doing that. I think, to be quite honest, I think they're quite pathetic. And I actually think it galvanised everyone the other night. I think people thought, you know, because I was half when I was driving home on Monday night, and I got a message saying it's been leaked. So I thought, you know, Tuesday then would have ended up being, you know, a non-starter. But we ended up, I think over 200 people, you know, came.
It's actually they're all buying the tickets to see Royalty on stage. That's what
it could have been like, I don't know why they persist, kind of thing, because it's just the same old nonsense every time you listen to him speak. But no, what I saw on Tuesday night was like genuine, like hardcore fans who, you know, this club's built on, isn't it, kind of thing. So irrespective of whether you're seeing the kit, they still turned up, you know what I mean, which was hugely appreciated. But yeah, I think all that we've got to do is make sure that we've got our house in order. If someone decides to do something like that, well, you know, that's on them, isn't it? Yeah. That's on them. You know, let them do it. We certainly don't want to be starting to like collect phones off people when they're coming in or sign saying no photography, because it looks like we don't trust them.
Yeah.
And not the whole lot, but part of this club moving forward is that comes back to that integrity thing. We want to develop trust with people, you know, and make sure that what we say we're going to deliver on, and you know, vice versa. So whilst it was a bit of a blip and it was disappointing, I think now we can probably see the funny side of it, because, you know, I think whoever that individual was, I think it's backfired on them more than it has us.
Yeah. Phil, thanks very much for that insight. Hope everyone watching enjoyed it. I get a plug in, the kits are available in the shop, in the market and online, home and away. Make sure you buy them both, get some money into the club.
Have you bought them?
I haven't bought them yet. I'm waiting for Sam to give me a discount code for the website. No, thanks for watching, we'll see you again soon.